because of this hoo-ha over the mayoral elections, which the government brought in, decided that they needed to have these elections in 4 key areas, and they're now saying we can't organise it in time. We're delaying it by a couple of years.
Yes, and this has happened before. I remember last year, Reform were absolutely furious because a whole load of local elections were being delayed. I mean, they did incredibly well anyway, didn't they, as we know. Sorry, that was this year, wasn't it? The world
it's going, I know.
It's so crazy now.
And also, by the time you've got to December, it's difficult to remember whether it was this year or last year.
So, but what we're talking about now is these are 4 new mayoral posts.
If you had Keir Starmer being hauled into a legal battle by Nigel Farage on your 2026 political bingo card, you might want to frame it, because the High Court has just sent shockwaves through Whitehall. Just as Labour appeared ready to quietly delay the democratic process for nearly 4 million citizens, the judiciary stepped in and drew a firm line, making it clear that accountability is not optional. What's unfolding now is a high-stakes courtroom clash, with the Reform UK leader accusing the government of trying to sidestep the electorate. While Labour argues that running elections is too expensive, almost as if democratic duty were a line item to trim, Farage is preparing for a decisive February 19th confrontation. Pressure is building, polling numbers are tightening, and tension inside the establishment is impossible to ignore. For the first time in a long stretch, those in power are being reminded that shifting the timetable does not shield them from public judgment. Quick favor: if you're enjoying this deep dive into the turbulence shaking Westminster, hit subscribe and tap the notification bell. More than 92% of viewers haven't, which is almost as surprising as a manifesto promise actually being delivered. It's free, takes a second, and genuinely helps the channel grow. Thank you if you've already done it. Now back to the story. To understand why this High Court decision is causing real strain inside Number 10, you have to look at the scale of what was proposed. Imagine a football team trailing 3-0 suddenly insisting the pitch needs redesigning, so the match must be delayed for a year. That's the rough equivalent of what around 30 local councils moved to do, encouraged by a government facing serious public pressure. Officials call it restructuring, Nigel Farage calls it sidelining voters. And by allowing Reform UK to move forward with its legal challenge, the judge has delivered a significant setback. Less a gentle warning, more the sharp blast of a referee's whistle pointing straight to the penalty spot. Senior Labour figures, including Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones, have framed the controversy as a matter of efficiency, arguing that shifting councils from 2-tier structures to unitary authorities makes immediate elections an unnecessary duplication of effort. It's the kind of Treasury reasoning that prioritizes spreadsheets over ballot boxes, suggesting voters should wait while the administrative furniture is rearranged. But the High Court has signaled that democratic rights aren't a bargaining chip for convenience. By scheduling a full hearing for February 19th and 20th, the court ensured the issue won't quietly disappear from the headlines or the legal calendar. Reform UK maintains that millions of residents risk losing their voice in local governance, turning this into a defining confrontation over accountability. The government now faces mounting scrutiny, and the court's intervention feels less like a minor procedural step and more like the opening strike in a far larger battle. The question hanging in the air is simple: why push so hard to delay the vote in the first place? Is this really about redrawing council boundaries and trimming costs? Or is it about numbers that spell serious trouble for the establishment? The polling paints a stark picture and explains why Keir Starmer's team might prefer the ballot boxes stay firmly sealed. Current projections suggest that if elections were held in May, Reform UK wouldn't just edge ahead, they'd surge, polling around 28.3%, with the Conservatives trailing on roughly 20.7%, and Labour falling back near 7% in the very councils seeking delays. In those areas, the party isn't staring at a minor setback, it's confronting the prospect of being wiped off the map. What worries strategists isn't structural reform, it's the political shockwave a heavy local defeat could send through Westminster, potentially reshaping momentum in the House of Commons and redefining the national conversation overnight.
Now, the fact that we've been told that the county council elections will go ahead, just 1 year late, is a good thing, not a bad thing. But the fact that these mayoral contests are to be postponed for a further 2 years is monstrous, given firstly that the electorate were told they would go ahead, given the amount of money that's been spent in preparing for them. But there's another factor I think we should consider. My voters in Clacton will now be expected and asked to vote in 2026, in 2027, and in 2028. Forgive me, but they might be getting slightly confused as to what's going on in local government. Well, it is a local government reorganisation. I have to say, it's one personally that I'm completely opposed to.
Nigel Farage has been predictably direct, arguing that the establishment is uneasy because it senses Reform UK would come out on top, and that claim is gaining traction. When nearly 4 million citizens are told their vote must wait due to cost concerns, while the governing party trails in key surveys, it fuels a perception gap that's hard to dismiss. Critics say Labour is simply trying to buy breathing space, hoping that by 2027 or 2028 public frustration over higher taxes and slow growth will ease. But the High Court's intervention delivered a firm reminder that delay has limits. Then came Darren Jones, stepping forward to defend the policy on financial grounds, presenting the case that elections during structural changes would be an unnecessary expense, a tough sell in a climate where accountability is already under the microscope. It's like a baker refusing to sell bread because he's busy rearranging the flour sacks, an argument that misses the core purpose of the job. Darren Jones insisted, "We're not frightened of democracy," a line that only intensified scrutiny as he defended the delay under bright studio lights. He maintained that local councils themselves requested the postponement, yet Reform UK counters that many of those councils are led by the same parties now sliding in the polls. When decision-makers vote to pause the very contest that could unseat them, skepticism is inevitable. Meanwhile, the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities attempted to downplay the High Court's move, suggesting it merely scheduled a hearing rather than issuing an injunction. But that framing struggles to hide the reality. The court has elevated the dispute to a formal legal battleground, ensuring the question of voter rights won't be brushed aside with a press release. In high-stakes politics, being summoned to a judicial review over your election plans is the equivalent of getting called to the head teacher's office. It's a clear signal that serious questions demand serious answers. The claim that voting is too costly isn't landing well, because many people see the cost of postponing a democratic voice as far greater than printing ballots and opening polling stations. If Labour assumed Nigel Farage would air his frustrations and quietly move on, that calculation now looks shaky. Reform UK has transformed the legal fight into a rallying cry, framing it as a stand for the ballot box itself. A party spokesperson didn't mince words, accusing Labour of attempting to sideline voters and vowing to prevail next month. What's unfolding isn't just a courtroom contest, it's a momentum play, amplifying a message that is already gaining traction in polling circles and intensifying the pressure on the government.
But then there is, of course, one very big reason why these elections should not go ahead, and there's no prizes for guessing. But it is an electoral calculus put out their figures just a couple of hours ago that Reform would have won all 4 of these contests and would have won them quite comfortably. The government are basically committing electoral fraud upon the electorate, who had every opportunity to put Reform mayors in place.
The anger Nigel Farage is tapping into isn't manufactured. When 3.9 million people across 591 council seats are told their vote won't happen this year, it doesn't feel like routine restructuring, it feels like a democratic gap opening up. And in politics, Farage has built a reputation on stepping into moments like that. By escalating the fight to the High Court, Reform UK has repositioned itself from insurgent outsider to self-styled guardian of constitutional principle. It's a calculated move that casts Keir Starmer's government as the very machinery of Whitehall he once promised to overhaul. All eyes now turn to the February hearing. If the court deems the delay unlawful, Labour could be forced into an abrupt reversal and face elections under hostile polling conditions. If the government prevails, the legal victory may still carry a political cost, reinforcing claims that it sought to postpone a public verdict. Either way, pressure is mounting inside Number 10, and the margin for error is shrinking fast. All of this tension appears driven by a simple political instinct: avoid a damaging result. At its heart, the clash is between administrative order and democratic urgency. The government argues for tidy restructuring, merging councils, cutting councillor numbers, streamlining services, policies that may read well in a briefing document but lose credibility if voters are asked to step aside to make them easier. Think of it like a local pub shutting for 6 months just to reorganize the taps. Customers would shrug and head elsewhere. But in democracy, there is no alternative venue for your vote. You either get your say or you don't. By framing local elections as an inconvenience to bureaucratic timelines, Keir Starmer and his ministers risk reinforcing the very perception reflected in weak polling figures, that process is being prioritized over public consent, and that's a narrative no government can afford to let harden. The High Court's intervention serves as a sharp reminder that the UK is a nation governed by law, not just by efficiency reports or internal spreadsheets. From the High Court up to the Supreme Court, the judiciary has become the arena where the government's assumed mandate is tested and often checked. As February's showdown approaches, the stakes couldn't be clearer. Labour is arguing cost and practicality, while Reform UK is framing the fight as a defence of democracy itself. On the doorstep, the message of citizen empowerment is far more resonant than bureaucracy. Thanks for watching the British Report. If you want to stay on top of this legal battle and see whether Nigel Farage can push the government back to the polls, hit like and subscribe. We'll be covering every twist and turn as it happens.